Good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I'm so glad you joined us on this first day of August, and what a show we have in store for you today. We're going to talk about the plea deal with the 9/11 masterminds. We're going to talk about Israel. We're going to talk about, of course, Trump's comments that are making the rounds. We've got quite a few things here about Harris, and we're going to be talking to our friends who are putting on the production. They're Cuckoo Lake players, putting on the production of Into the Woods, which opens today at the Haverling High School Auditorium. As a matter of fact, let's put that up on the screen just so you have it. All the information you need before we talk to our very special guests. Sarah Love, the director, David Scott, the baker, and Cheyenne Love, who's playing Little Red Riding Hood. So that's coming up a little bit later on. We do have a few comments from after the program yesterday, and I had a little time yesterday, so I put them up on the screen. First one up, Frank, I agree with you so much. I wish your computer accepted a thumbs up button. Isn't that nice? The best news show in the area for sure. Thank you so much. How kind of you. What a great way to start the program. Thank you for that. That came in right after the show or right towards the end of the show yesterday. And another text, a little off topic from what we discussed yesterday, but I would love to hear your take on it. This coming from a viewer. As an embarrassed Horseheads resident, our police station was right across the street from a bomb maker. A pot shop and another weed shop around the corner. Come on, let's get serious about revitalizing Hanover Square and weed out, pun intended, non-productive shops taking up space that could be a tourist attraction like Corning has produced. You raise an interesting point about the pot shops. Now, they're springing up everywhere. Now, Governor Hochul, and thank you, by the way, for the comments. Governor Hochul announced that there was they've cracked down on 1,000 illegal weed stores in New York, 750 in New York City, so I assume 250 in upstate, in all of upstate. And this is part of Operation Padlock to Protect. Now, what's interesting about this issue specifically, I know Steuben County has done, as far as I can tell, as of my last update, nothing to crack down on it in our county. And I know this was in reference to Horseheads. So the local law enforcement have not been able to crack down on the magnitude that has been hoped. I see more and more springing up, so I can understand the frustration. Thank you for that comment, and feel free to weigh in if you are a Horseheads resident. Another comment right before the program that brought me the first virtual wave, and I like this. I thought of a name for the Vance rallies. J.D. Vance giving rallies. I thought of a name for the Vance rallies. Tour de Vance. I like that. Tour de Vance. I think that's a clever name. Now, the long knives, as I always say, are out for J.D. Vance. If you have not been paying attention, numerous attacks on him that we may get to as well. But we do have some very heavy issues to start with this morning, and I'm assuming you're outraged, like many others, about the plea deal with the 9/11 masterminds. We're going to get to that probably in the second break, maybe third break. First, in Times Square in New York City yesterday, anti-Israel protesters held up a portrait of assassinated Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh and waved a pro-terror flag during a shocking demonstration, which are becoming more common. It'll be interesting to see now that Harris is the nominee, what the protests will look like. She's tried to take perhaps an even weaker stance in regards to Israel than even Biden did. Not meeting, let me rephrase that, not going to the address of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, though meeting with him. It'll be interesting if these protests do ascend on the Democratic National Convention at an interesting time, being that it's in Chicago. Now we know, today, Thursday. Today is the day that voting online begins by the delegates to make Kamala Harris the nominee for the Democratic ticket. Of course, not receiving a single vote from Democrats, though that does not seem to be a concern. It's not something the media or others are really drawing attention to. They don't seem to mind the elites picking their candidate. So that will be done with zero transparency. Again, something I would think if you're a Democrat you'd be upset about, but no. If you were a delegate and you were to vote for somebody other than Harris, they will just put you down as present and will not have you specifically vote for the other candidate. Those numbers will not come up, though Democrats are very good about rallying around each other, so I don't really see too much of that happening. Though we do have a couple things with some anger surrounding Harris, and I'm getting on a little bit of a tangent here, but have you realized that since she has become the presumptive nominee, when Biden dropped out, has not given a press conference? Kind of interesting. We know there's this honeymoon period right now where, oh boy, the polls are up. She's doing the best job anybody's ever done. They're all the speculation about who she's going to pick as her VP, just nothing but positive coverage, which will probably continue until November. But it'll be interesting when she has a non-scripted event, if she does do press conferences, or as my theory is, as much as possible, she will run a Biden campaign, which is completely scripted. And if there are reporter situations, they will be reporters very friendly to her cause, which are unfortunately most reporters. But I want to go back to this, and it's interesting I got on that tangent based on this story. But the hateful mob in Times Square chanting "Free Palestine" while one protester held up a flag representing Hamas. Another demonstrator held up a photo of the assassinated Hamas leader. The same demonstrators sporting a mask and sunglasses because they're so proud in their convictions they don't want anybody to know who they are. They wore a hat with a yellow headband around it that represents the terror group Hezbollah. Another protester also held up the portrait of Henya, I'm not saying his name right, I know, as others waved Palestinian flags at the crossroads of the world. The demonstration of roughly 300 people apparently came in response to a speech former Israeli Defense Forces spokesman Jonathan Conrinkas gave in Midtown. Hundreds of supporters of the Jewish state were on hand for the event as well, and about 50 remained into Wednesday night waving Israeli flags to counter the pro-Palestinian rally. At one point, some of the pro-Palestinian protesters surrounded a pair of Israeli supporters and appeared to throw liquid at them. Now, as it's August, as we near the beginning of the academic year in colleges across the country, protesters are already threatening campus disruptions for the fall. And according to Ricky Schlott, who has done a lot of reporting on this from the New York Post, has said the schools look completely unprepared for this, just like in the fall, or just like in the spring. As back to school season nears, students and faculty are preparing to return to campus and preparing to return to protesting. Pro-Palestinian, or as we have seen, anti-Israel, pro-Hamas protesting. The protesters who wreaked havoc on Columbia University's campus in the spring have already declared that they, quote, will be back. So what is Columbia doing about it? The big picture is unclear, but their initial strategy seems pretty thin. In a July 24th email to students, faculty, and staff, University President Shafiq, yes, Shafiq's still at Columbia, said her team is working hard on fostering community, clarifying rules, and defining discrimination in anticipation of the fall semester. Now, if you were a Jewish student, would you look at Columbia University at all at this point? You know you'll be intimidated. You'll know you'll be threatened. You'll be harassed. But Shafiq continued, we truly flourish when we engage with different perspectives from a foundation rooted in mutual respect and a commitment to rigor and open inquiry. Now, if that were true, the freedom of speech, those type of things, if that were true, okay. We know that's not the case. We've seen so much discrimination against conservative students. Now we're seeing it against Jewish students. Radical campus activists have proven they are willing to get arrested en masse for their cause. University-sponsored bonding seems unlikely to win over their hearts and minds. Now, I don't want to go further into this, but I don't believe they'll be prepared. I don't think their listening and understanding is going to amount to anything. We'll put it that way. It's hard for them to crack down when it's crystal clear that so much of their faculty, so much of their staff support this cause, this anti-Israel, pro-Hamas protest. And again, they have shown time and time again, it's not just Columbia, it's other universities, that they are willing to sacrifice the safety and security of their Jewish students in the name of these protesters, in the protection of these protesters. This all ties in when Iran's Ayatollah al-Khamenei has ordered a direct attack on Israel. And keep in mind, the protests that we just talked about in Times Square, the protests that will begin at the start of the school year, this is at a time when Israel is clearly heightened alert. Ayatollah al-Khamenei has commanded Iranian forces to launch a direct attack against Israel. That's according to a report yesterday. 3 Iranian officials confirmed the situation to the New York Times. The news comes hours after Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh, I pronounce it different every way, was assassinated in Tehran. The White House has been unable to independently verify Haniyeh's death as of Wednesday afternoon, but Tehran is placing the blame on the Israeli Defense Forces. So this is getting very troubling. What are we seeing? I know the United States, the White House has said that they knew nothing about the attack beforehand, but this is all coming through Biden's surrogates, essentially, or spokespeople. We have not heard from Biden lately, which raises more concerns. Remember, at a time where many have said we are close to a World War III scenario, we have Joe Biden in the White House for about 6 months. Now, there's a lot here. Hopefully we get a chance to cover it, where people, and it's obviously from conservative media because the mainstream media won't talk about it, but one of the greatest cover-ups in American history, which is covering up the president's mental decline, and Kamala Harris directly a part of that cover-up. And yet nothing is being reported on that. All that's being reported are these great stories of how the momentum has shifted and how great she's doing. And yet, and some have been saying this, there has yet to be any real substance from her campaign. Now, granted, it's been a little over a week, almost 2 weeks, where she's been the presumptive nominee. But it's been nothing but political rhetoric with no true substance. So you say, well, let's look at her record. Other than the failed policies of the Biden administration, and even in some of those scenarios, what has she done? What are her achievements in her career? It's worth talking about, and that's why we will talk about it a little bit later on. When we come back, we're going to talk more about Israel. We're going to talk about this 9/11 mastermind and 2 other terrorists striking plea deals. The Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration, striking a plea deal with 9/11 masterminds. If you've not heard this yet, you will most likely be outraged. And we're going to get to that when we come back. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We're just getting started. So stay right there. And we are back. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Yes, we had a major malfunction in the roof cam. The roof cam got fried. We are working on that. You know, anybody that wants to be a sponsor of said roof cam and have their logo on the bottom of the screen every time it comes back to that, let me know. Contact me at the bottom of the screen. So Israel has sent a message to Iran with the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, that nowhere is a haven for terrorists. Now, well, we'll get to the 9/11 issue in a moment. But the early Wednesday morning assassination attributed to Israel reportedly caused a panic in the senior ranks of the Iranian regime. Haniyeh, who is based in Qatar, was in Iran to attend the inauguration of Iran's new president. He was staying at a supposedly secret guest house operated by Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps at the time of his death. Henya's assassination is wrapped with implications for the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza and for the broader regional war that Iran is fighting against Israel directly and through its terror proxies. At the time of his death, he was responsible for the terror regime's finances and arms flow. He was also responsible for Hamas's relation with its state sponsor, Qatar, where he resided since 2017, as well as Iran and Turkey. He also oversaw Hamas's operation in the West, including its influential operations in the Western, or its influence operations in the Western media. There is no haven for terrorists. And what this shows, and Netanyahu has showed it again, no matter what anyone else says, they are going to defend themselves. They are going to win this war. Now, we know that Biden, especially when he was running for office, started weakening his stance on Israel support because, unfortunately, the Democratic Party has now seen this influx of anti-Israel sentiment. And so his polls started going down amongst that bloc, and he got worried, and he started caving to their demands. And that's why you see Harris be wishy-washy, trying to get her sea legs to figure out exactly how she wants to handle this. Netanyahu did address, so I don't know what we will do in response to any of this, but Netanyahu addressed Israelis after the strike on the terrorist leader, saying, "Together we will fight." Now, it is notable that Netanyahu did not say directly that Israel was responsible for this strike. I'm not going to read the whole speech. You can find it for yourself or watch it for yourself. It is a very poignant, very important speech. Netanyahu always, for lack of a better term, rallying the troops, does a great job. And as Mark Toth and Jonathan Sweet write, Israel's strike on terror chiefs show it will fight alone despite our reluctance. Iran's new inaugurated president, I'm just going to try to butcher everybody's name, Mossad Pezeshkian, was greeted with the now all too familiar frenzied chants of death to Israel and death to America in the streets, cafes, and public squares in Tehran. The crowd should have tried screaming death to Henya. It would have been far more prescient. That day, just hours after the meeting with Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah al-Khamenei, Hamas leader Ismail Henya was killed, as we know. Good riddance. He was the primary driver of the October 7th attacks and directly culpable in the murder and kidnapping of U.S. citizens, 7 of whom are still being held dead or alive by Hamas in Gaza. Israel is showing the White House how to win. After months of self-defeating handcuffing by the Biden administration and its insistence on restraint and proportionate responses, Israel said enough and went for the Hamas jugular. Yeah, this idea that, and wait till you hear some of the comments on this too, by the way. One of them, and I'm paraphrasing, but I'll mention. Oh, maybe I don't have it in order here, but the idea is there was a Democrat representative who said something to the extent of, "We're never going to get a ceasefire." Oh, here it is. Democrat Senator Martin Heinrich, said, "I think the most valuable thing we can do here, and it's not a political thing, it's just what is the right thing to do, is to secure that ceasefire. And unfortunately, these latest 2 attacks on the leaders in Hezbollah, the political leader in Hamas, that makes it harder to accomplish a ceasefire. And that's what we should be focused on, is getting those hostages released, making it safe for those citizens again. That should be our North Star in all of this." So, darn it all, Israel, killing terrorists is making this ceasefire all the more difficult. It is unbelievable, the dislike and the anger and the outright hatred of Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu after that October 7th attack. Think of that. You're making our job of securing a ceasefire. Keep in mind, a ceasefire that existed on October 6th before Hamas started that deadly attack. So if only there were a ceasefire, if only you would stop killing terrorist leaders. And that may be the mindset that leads to the plea deal for the 9/11 mastermind, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But as this peace continues, killing Henya in Tehran wasn't the only victory of the day. Earlier in Beirut, Israel claimed responsibility for killing Fouad Shakur, the third-ranking member in the command of Hezbollah. So they're showing us in the United States how to win. The goal would be, it says here, Harris, we're going to get into how this ties in with the presidential race. Harris last week, wittingly or not, sent the message to Khamenei and Nasrallah as she crassly pandered to Generation Z and progressive voters by opting to embrace or to embarrass, Netanyahu at the White House, using their bilateral meeting to criticize Israel over its war against Hamas. The presumptive Democratic nominee said she wouldn't be silent, and on Tuesday, Netanyahu in effect responded, saying with Israel's actions that he will not be cowed by ill-advised White House obstructionism. Iran will have to try to hit Israel. They've already vowed revenge. But this calculus must include doing so without threatening his nuclear weapons program, which is rapidly approaching breakout. Unleashing Hezbollah might, in Ayatollah Khamenei's view, be the only option that ensures regime survival and preserves his nuclear facilities. Israel, however, may not wait. Now, what happens, as some have said, if this does break into a World War III scenario? Well, according to a new report, the United States is not ready for global war. The Commission on the National Defense Strategy, a congressionally mandated group with members handpicked by Democrat and Republican lawmakers, is not known for hyperbole. Its conclusions that the U.S., quote, has not kept pace with a worsening situation should be a major wake-up call to all of us, and something to keep in mind as we head towards November. China, and we talk about China, Russia, and Iran. China has largely negated the U.S. military advantage in the Western Pacific after 20 years of investment. Now, you also have to ask the question and remember, Joe Biden is still president of the United States. So whatever happens when the smoke clears in November, and let's say Donald Trump is successful and wins the presidency, what do you think China does from November to January? Do you think they see that opportunity to take Taiwan? Do they do it now? Do they do it sooner than later? These are all questions that all tie in with what's happening now with Israel and Iran. The Pentagon's portrayal of Russia as an acute threat undersells the ongoing and persistent nature of the hazards it poses, especially in space and cyber. We can go on with this, and I'm not trying to start the program to worry you this morning. But again, when the Commission on the National Defense Strategy says that we are not ready for a global war, when we see what's going on internationally, we should take heed. Also, I want you to think of one other thing. And we're going to talk more about Israel in just a moment because I'm running really late. I want you to remember back during 2016, before the pandemic hit in 2020, think of the, 3 years of the Trump presidency. Whether or not you like Trump or not, whatever you think, there was peace and prosperity. Now, people that even support the Biden and Harris administration are saying that we're on the precipice of a World War III. We have Israel, we have Ukraine, all because the botched rollout in Afghanistan, many believe. Just something to keep in mind as we head to November. Also, what did you think? I haven't really posed any questions this morning. What did you think of Trump's comments? Getting a lot of the media attention that said that, and I should probably quote it, is she Indian or black? In reference to Harris's identity. We will talk about that. I don't want you to think I'm avoiding that. There's just so much on the international front that is so important to discuss that you may not be getting elsewhere. So I wanted to highlight that this morning. We're going to get through that at some point. Then we're going to go to Harris and her campaign, then Trump, maybe some New York State issues, all that and much more. Keep those comments, keep those waves coming in. We're just getting started. Break number 2, only about 10 minutes late. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. And we are back with Frankly Speaking. We're going to have to make this segment quick because I'm running late this morning. A comment from a viewer. Harris shows us who she is, although she changes her views on a dime. Her absence from Netanyahu's visit spoke volumes. I couldn't agree more. She is going to be very much like Biden in that sense, where the core values only matter until the polls come in. So you're going to see a lot of change right now. That's why there's no substance. She's keeping it where the media can say the momentum's behind her. She's doing great. Oh my goodness, it's amazing. Because there has yet to be any substance, any press conferences, anything like that. Just rallies. And they cover those rallies, just fawning over them with no coverage of Trump rallies. I saw a blurb yesterday only because Trump had visited Pennsylvania again. One other quick thing about Israel, just to show, even though we're at a time where we're not, as the White House, I should say, is not showing their support for Israel, and Netanyahu saying, we're going to go it alone. We're going to do what's right. But Israel's helping us. Listen to this. FBI has contracted an Israeli firm to help with the gunman from the attempted assassination on Donald Trump's encryption. Encryption has become a major issue. People wondering if there was some foreign entity or something else involved with this man, Thomas Matthew Crooks. American law enforcement agencies have tapped the company for years for its ability to break into smartphones from a range of big tech firms and using different mobile operation systems. So I just thought that was a very interesting piece. We don't have to get into all that. Okay, so what are your thoughts? 9/11 mastermind and 2 terrorists who were awaiting trial at Guantanamo Bay have now been allowed to strike plea deals. The alleged mastermind of the September 11th terrorist attack and 2 other terrorists being held on Guantanamo Bay will be spared the death penalty under a deal with prosecutors. Mitch McConnell, I'm going to tell you what other people had to say, but I thought Mitch McConnell had such a great point here. The only thing worse than negotiating with terrorists is negotiating with terrorists in capture, that have been captured. A spokesperson for the Office of Military Commissions, which is prosecuting the case, confirmed it had entered into pre-trial agreements with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the accused principal architect of the al-Qaeda attacks, and 2 alleged co-conspirators, all of whom have been held at the U.S. military prison on the coast of Cuba since 2003. Rear Admiral Aaron Rue, chief prosecutor for the OMC, said in a letter to victims' families, in exchange for removal of the death penalty as a possible punishment, these 3 accused have agreed to plead guilty to all of the charged offenses, including the murder of 2,976 people listed in the charge sheet. News that the death penalty was no longer on the table for the suspects, whose alleged actions killed nearly 3,000 people in the worst terrorist attack on U.S. soil in American history, came as a gut punch, needless to say, to victims' families. I am very disappointed. We waited patiently for a long time. I wanted the death penalty. The government has failed us. Daniel DeLaura, whose twin brother John was one of the 23 New York police NYPD cops killed that day of the attack. Retired police officer Jim Smith, who was the husband of Maria Smith, the only female police officer who died on September 11th, said he felt like it was a kick, and we'll say, I'm going to change his words for the interest of TV because I know we have a young viewership here. Kick in the guts. The prosecution and families have waited 23 years to have our day in court, to put on the record what these animals did to our loved ones. They took that opportunity away from us. They committed the worst crime in the history of our country. They should receive the highest penalty. Yes, is there ever going to be, I don't mean to laugh, are we ever going to use the death penalty? If these people don't deserve the death penalty, then who does? It's just so heartbreaking to read these victims, the loved ones of these victims' statements. Retired cop Kathy Vigano, whose husband was killed on 9/11, said, quote, I am angry and disappointed that enemy combatants who killed thousands of Americans in our homeland are now able to exploit the U.S. judicial system to their benefit, receiving support from American taxpayers for shelter, food, and health care for the rest of their lives. The letter revealed that the terrorist suspects have also agreed to respond to any questions the family members of the victims have, quote, regarding their roles and reasons for conducting the September 11th attack. Yeah, that's what you want. Propaganda piece by terrorists. Family members were told they were allowed to submit questions which would be funneled to the men through their defense attorneys and answered within 90 days. It is not immediately clear where the men will be incarcerated following their pleas. Tara Estrada, national chair of the 9/11 Families United, a community of families of people murdered in the attacks, said some of the relatives wanted a plea deal, quote, because they wanted it to end. But for me personally, I wanted a trial. I wanted him to be found guilty, and I wanted him to be punished accordingly. So a plea deal for the 9/11 mastermind. That's where we are at with all this news. Boy, I started off with some very bad news this morning. We're going to talk more about this, so we are going to get to the Harris campaign. We are going to get to the Trump campaign. What were your thoughts about Trump's comments yesterday that are making the media rounds? So there's two stories today, essentially, because this plea deal buried on most websites. The two stories: momentum for Harris. The polls are great for Harris. And the other story is about Trump's comments, wondering if Harris was black or Indian. So we're going to talk about those two stories a little bit later on. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. A couple of comments from viewers. First, that is unbelievable with the emoji like that. Yes, and that is in reference to, if you're just joining us, the alleged mastermind of the September 11th terrorist attacks and two other terrorists striking plea deals. So the death penalty is no longer on the table. Another comment, which kind of goes off kilter on this, but I totally understand why you sent it, because we've been talking about Harris. What I don't understand is why Harris is running on the fact that she's black and Indian, because that's in reference to what Trump said yesterday. I don't understand why that's even important unless you're looking for a specific vote. If President Trump ran on the fact that he was white and of Scottish and German descent, I think the media would make a big joke out of that. So I don't understand why there has to be a separation of, the different heritage. So maybe you could explain that to me. I can't explain that to you. It's just like I can't explain to you the white dudes for Harris and the white women for Harris groups and subgroups, and that to me is strange. But at the end of the day, it must be for voting block scenarios, looking for specific votes. So let's get back to the 9/11 mastermind for a moment. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, I thought, did a fantastic job in his statements. The Biden-Harris administration's weakness in the face of sworn enemies of the American people apparently knows no bounds. The plea deal with terrorists, including Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the mastermind of the 9/11 attacks that killed thousands of Americans, is a revolting abdication of the government's responsibility to defend America and provide justice. This is the line that it takes away. That I took away from it. The only thing worse than negotiating with terrorists is negotiating with them after they are in custody. That's a powerful statement. So never mind, I don't know that one word. The only thing worse than negotiating with terrorists is negotiating with them after they are in custody. He continued, the families of their victims and the American people deserve real justice. In the same week that Israel eliminated some of Iran's most trusted terrorist proxies, the administration's decision to spare these mass murderers from the death penalty is an especially bitter pill. And that's why I piggyback this story from the Israel story. Because again, another powerful line from Mitch McConnell. Look at Netanyahu and the leadership there, and look what we're dealing with in the United States. And I know at one time, this was way before what unfolded the last few days, someone had said, and I thought it was such a great line, it looks like the real leader of the free world is Benjamin Netanyahu. But just to wrap up what McConnell said, meanwhile, the Biden-Harris administration still seeks to release other Guantanamo terrorists back into the world. The administration's cowardice in the face of terror is a national disgrace. House Speaker Mike Johnson said 23 years ago, America watched in horror as thousands of innocent Americans died. America mourned for weeks afterwards as first responders sifted through the ashes at Ground Zero, at the Pentagon, and at the crash site in Shanksville. For more than 2 decades, the families of those murdered by these terrorists have waited for justice. This plea deal is a slap in the face of those families. They deserve better from the Biden-Harris administration. I couldn't agree more. The weakness, and this is at a time when we've talked about it, we're almost in a September 10th mindset, where because of the open, porous borders, there are real threats of terrorist attacks. And it's just not being taken seriously. And now we see the Biden administration offers the mastermind of 9/11 a plea deal. Now, J.D. Vance ripped into this. J.D. Vance getting a lot of heat in the media. They really calling him weird. But he said, we need a president who kills terrorists, not negotiates with them. That's a great line from Vance. That's a great line. We need a president who kills terrorists, not negotiates with them. Just today, I heard that the Biden-Harris Department of Justice cut a deal with al-Qaeda terrorist Khalid Sheikh Mohammed to avoid the death penalty. As someone who enlisted in the Marines to serve after 9/11, that is ridiculous, but it's not surprising. Just think about the point that we've gotten to. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have weaponized the Department of Justice to go after their political opponents, but they're cutting a sweetheart deal with 9/11 terrorists. We need a president who kills terrorists, not negotiates with them. And going back to Mitch McConnell's take, not only negotiates with terrorists in custody. So we're going to talk more about J.D. Vance, more about the race, but I had to bring that to you because it's so frustrating. But there's one last thing on this from the New York Post editorial board. It's been 23 years since terrorists killed 2,977 Americans, destroyed the Twin Towers, and forever scarred our nation. Families of the victims have been desperate for closure, desperate for justice for far too long. Now, after having already dishonored the sacrifice of our troops with the disastrous pullout from Afghanistan, President Biden and Kamala Harris dishonor the memories of those slain on 9/11 by agreeing to a plea deal with terrorist mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. He will face life in prison and not the death penalty he deserves. And to that point of the one loved one of a victim of 9/11 saying, for the rest of his life, taxpayers' dollars, your dollars, my dollars, will be spent on his welfare, on his food, on, I'm sure, entertainment, healthcare. That this disappointing closure took this long is itself a travesty. After failed attempts by President Obama to try KSM in the mainland United States, a military trial was planned, but that process dragged on for years, piling pain upon pain. At least Osama bin Laden faced the wrath of the United States. The KSM deal is just one more failure of an administration rife with them. If we can offer any comfort to the 9/11 families, it is this. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed may live another day, but the fires of hell await him. On that note, we are going to take a break. Keep those comments coming in. Keep those waves coming in. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back. I had to look it up. I said it right. I am not overly familiar with that word that I'll admit my ignorance, that Mitch McConnell used. Abdication. You don't hear that often. At least I don't. Not in my social circle. Anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Because Harris is getting, we're being told that Kamala Harris has the momentum. That all of a sudden people want to turn out to vote, that she has just lit a fire under the whole country. Perhaps the best start to any campaign in the history of campaigning. Again, I find it really interesting that never receiving a single vote from the Democrat voters, but that's okay. She is where she is. What are your thoughts? Because I know we have some very proud union members in this audience who mention it quite frequently. So I wonder what your thoughts are about the United Auto Workers Union, who have now endorsed Kamala Harris. I know it does not come as a surprise for anybody who's paid attention to politics for any amount of time. We know that most unions, not speaking for every union, most unions do support Democrat politicians. But in this case, at a time when she specifically, we mentioned it yesterday, pushing for those EV buses that was such a dismal failure under the bipartisan infrastructure law, isn't this going against the best interest of their dues-paying union members? Her historic candidacy builds on the Biden-Harris administration's proven track record of standing with the UAW and delivering major gains for the working class. Now we know that the Republican Party has really become the party of the working class. We've seen that. Just look at the makeup of the rallies. Look at the rallies. Look at the difference. On Wednesday, August 7th, the Harris for President campaign will come to Detroit to rally with UAW members, Michigan voters, and thousands of working class people who are fighting for a better future. Vice President Harris will also meet directly with UAW members and leaders to hear about the issues that matter to Michigan workers. Now, the UAW noted Harris's support for the union dates back to 2019 when she walked a picket line as a U.S. Senator. In the Harris endorsement, UAW President Shawn Fain said 1 million former and past union members will be mobilized to beat former President Trump. Trump has publicly courted the UAW's nearly 400,000 members. J.D. Vance speaks often for the need to reindustrialize America. But Fain said, "We stand at a crossroads in this country. We could put a billionaire back in office who stands against everything our union stands for, or we can elect Kamala Harris, who will stand shoulder to shoulder with us in our war on corporate greed." Okay. Well, there you are. UAW, love your thoughts on it. Okay. We've got to take a short break. Wrapping up hour number one. I see some great comments coming in. We'll try to get to as many as we can. Just as a, maybe just a side note, just for those of you who don't text and leave a voicemail, love it. Not a problem whatsoever. But it sometimes takes a little longer for it to generate because it actually generates the words for me here so I can read it. So if I haven't mentioned it, or we've had enough coming in the last few days. I think I've missed a few and I apologize. Or if it's so off topic, I save it for later and sometimes don't get to it. So I do apologize. I read all the comments. I love all the comments. I don't want anybody to think that I'm skipping over them or anything like that. So keep them coming in and we got to take this break. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Here's a few comments from viewers. Frank, I just heard that the U.S. no longer has a military base in the Philippines. Apparently, when Dirt Day became president, he doesn't want the American bases. Long time ago, Clark Base pulled out, and now Clark Base is an airport. I'm thinking that if things start happening with China, that's going to be a weak spot. And that's going to be interesting if China makes their move on Taiwan. And if you haven't joined us, we've talked a lot of international this morning. Another comment, different comment from a different viewer. I thought the United Auto Workers was backing Trump because they were at the convention. That was actually the Teamsters president, Sean O'Brien, which was a major speech at the RNC. But that was the Teamsters president. So just if you are just joining us, your thoughts on the UAW, United Auto Workers, endorsing Kamala Harris yesterday. Now, there's some talks. How am I doing on time? Oh, a couple. Well, now I'll get to the housekeeping in a little bit. There's quite a few things here that we're going to get to about where the Harris campaign is right now and where it could be. There's a lot of speculation, if you haven't heard, that it'll be Shapiro as her VP because she's having that announcement in Pennsylvania on Tuesday. Also, as an update, if you haven't been joining us the last few days, voting begins today for the delegates to pledge their delegates to Harris. Harris is the only one, I guess for lack of a better term, on the ballot. So there's no real other option. Now, let's say a delegate goes rogue and says, oh, I want it to be Newsom. they'll just be marked down as voting present. I think the results are done on Monday, and then she'll be the official nominee for the Democratic Party, having not received a single vote from Democratic voters. But she receiving a big endorsement. UAW, it doesn't come as a surprise, but I don't think that's necessarily in the best interest of auto workers. But what are your thoughts on that? Keep those comments and waves coming in. There's also a few things here about, obviously, Trump. I want to get your opinion specifically on Trump's comments yesterday. I know some people talking, and thank you to the new caller who commented, yes, the DNA test. It is interesting to me how much so far, just in, week and a half, 2 short weeks, that we've already had the white dudes for Harris, and all of this kind of identity politics is going to be a major, and listen, Trump skidded into that yesterday with his comments, but the identity politics of it all, we'll talk about that. Some things about J.D. Vance as well, because the media, not big fans of J.D. Vance. What are your thoughts? I would love to hear. I actually heard some of this is how bad the media is, and we know the media bias. But it's gotten so bad that someone called him the Dan Quayle of Sarah Palin's. So I'm going to pose this question for you, for those who voted in the McCain-Obama election. How many of you voted for the McCain ticket because of Palin? I remember at the time doing talk radio. So many people were calling in saying they weren't big fans of McCain, the kind of the maverick style, the more moderate style, but they like Sarah Palin, so they ended up voting more for Sarah Palin in that instance. So I'm wondering, do you think Palin, and I know this is kind of an outdated question, but do you think Palin actually hurt that ticket as much as they're now trying to suggest in the media, and also, again, trying to label him as one of the worst VP picks in history? Some would have argued before, maybe it was Harris. But no, it is the worst VP pick in history. According to many in the news media, Harris, you're right. Vance, not Harris. So it's J.D. Vance. All right, I saw so many comments coming in. I'm getting distracted. All right, we got to take a short break. Hour number 1 in the books. Hour number 2 to begin in just mere moments. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking. Welcome. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on historic Market Street in Corning. Coming up in just a little bit, we're going to be talking to our friends from the Keuka Lake Players, who will be proudly presenting Into the Woods, opening today, as a matter of fact, at Haverling High School Auditorium. So we'll be talking to them in just a little bit. So many good comments coming in. If you are just joining us, we're talking about the Biden-Harris administration, striking that plea deal with the 9/11 mastermind, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, and 2 other terrorists. So the death penalty no longer on the table. We could talk about that. I asked the question, what do you think about Donald Trump's comments yesterday? We're going to talk about that in depth. Let's go to a few. Oh my gosh. So many comments coming in since break. But let's get to some of these. We'll get to the other comments as much as we can in future segments. Why is the UAW backing an administration that has eroded its base here in the United States when Trump has promised to help the automotive industry? Trump did help the automotive industry back in 2016. And when you look at the rules and regulations this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, have put on the auto industries, I don't understand it either. I think it shows, and this is why, I know we have some proud union members in the audience, I think this shows why many people dislike unions, because they've become more of a political organization, a Democrat, a part of the Democrat wing, if you will, than they are really looking out for their due-paying members. So your thoughts on that? And here's a great comment from Ken. And this is in reference to President Trump's comments yesterday. It was obvious that the NABJ invitation was a setup to do what they could do to demonize Trump. Well, I'm going to go through. I'm probably going to interject with some of my own points here, Ken, but you're right on point here. The president of the association refused to attend. Was it due to his deep-seated journalistic desire to inform the public, or his allegiance, I should say, to the Democrats? Number 2, Trump was told that Kamala would be there. Did she really have a conflict and they forgot to inform Trump? Or was it previously agreed that she wouldn't attend so that they could get Trump to agree to be there so they could try to damage him? Yeah, I don't think Harris was never going to go. And then what did he say? Something about, and she's going to be allowed to come back and do Zoom, and I wasn't allowed to do Zoom. Continuing, though, they pretended to have equipment issues to make the most well-known person on earth wait, to show him their disdain for him and his time. And also, the whole time building him up there, you know, I don't know how many of you have given speeches. That downtime is frustrating. You want to get up there, you want to give your speech. I also think it's funny, I don't know why there was a time limit. I don't know why there was this amount of time, because it took, what did he say, about a half an hour because of the equipment issues. And then so she says, oh, Mr. President, could you answer the question? We only have half an hour. And that's why I'm glad he called her out and said, there's only half an hour because your equipment was broken. And to the next point, the ABC activist masquerading as a journalist was clearly being as nasty as possible because they know Trump reacts to that type of attitude. Yes, and you know, I would recommend Democrat, Republican, watch that full back and forth, because it shows you not only the bias from the media, it shows you the disdain they have for Trump and the idea that we talked about yesterday, we've been talking about frequently, like the New York Times said, essentially nothing's off limits in the destruction of Trump. Because there was one point when they brought up the J.D. Vance comments about, it wasn't about J.D. Vance. It was about somebody saying that Kamala Harris was a DEI hire. And so she reads her whole question, and then she says, Mr. President, do you denounce those statements? So it was never, can I get your opinion on this? It was coming in under the pretext that it was inappropriate, that it was wrong, that no one should ever say or question Kamala Harris's background. So that would be like me on yesterday's program when it was that Walz, who's on the short list to be VP, where he said socialism, to some people, socialism is other people's neighborliness. So imagine if I had the opportunity to interview Harris. And I said, Vice President Harris, Walz has said that socialism is, some people's socialism is other people's neighborliness. Do you disavow that question? You could see where they would instantly call bias, where they would instantly say that was a loaded question. But there's so many examples like that during this back and forth. So yes, Ken, I promised I was going to get on a tangent. I'm sorry. Next point by Ken. Trump reacted like most people would in that situation, because he is more real than most of the chameleon politicians and what they are willing to say to get a vote. I agree, Ken. I thought that was a great point. I would recommend anybody watch that. It's not very long. As Ken had pointed out here, they had technical issues. He's having issues even hearing, and they both were the second lady. I don't have their names in front of me, and I apologize over that. I should. So we can talk about that. If you want to jump ahead to, let's jump ahead to that, and we'll get to Kamala in just a little bit, because I can tell that's where you want to go. And I always try to do my best to do what the viewers want. So let's get to that as I get my paperwork awkwardly in order. Okay. Oh man, there is a good piece here though. But okay. Trump, if you're not familiar, it means you've been living under a rock. But because this is the biggest story. Well, there's two stories, as I mentioned earlier. It's about Harris's momentum and about Trump's comments. Trump had said, another thing, I'm sorry I keep doing this. Another thing, if you watched it, I know the media reports that it was full of boos and jeers and hisses and like that. I thought there was actually, surprisingly, at points, some support for what he was saying. And the audience, to me, didn't act like they were reacting much at all. And I would like to know more, to Ken's point, about Harris was supposed to be there. They lied to him. But then I guess he had to show up in person, and she can do Zoom in the future, something to that extent. But this is what Trump had to say, if you have not heard by now. Quote, She was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. Trump drew a smattering of jeers from an audience of about 1,000 people. Didn't you also, not on this comment, but throughout his speech, didn't you also hear people with that laugh that Trump gets so often with his, for lack of a better term, bluster, some of the things that he says? And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, I think they've been overreacting in the media about how the audience reacted to this. But he continued. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black? But you know what? I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person. Hours after the comments, Harris told members of the historically black sorority Sigma Gamma Rho gathered in Houston that his remarks were yet another reminder of what the 4 years under the president would look like. It was the same old show of divisiveness and disrespect. The American people deserve better. I will say this. Last night, that speech, or whatever you want to call it, the Q&A with Trump, if anything, it shows you the media bias and the media hatred towards Trump. It was a setup from the beginning. But the fact that Trump went there is remarkable. Keep this in mind. Harris has not given a press conference, has not had this type of Q&A. Now, I'm not saying she won't at a very friendly venue at some point. She'll do a Q&A or a town hall with some organization that is very friendly to her with softball questions. Trump went in there knowing that it would be hostile and took that anyway. And then that first loaded question was very reminiscent, if you recall, of the 2016 debates and the loaded questions to attack Trump, where the whole question is nothing but an attack on Trump. And then what do you say, Mr. President? So it shows you exactly what Trump is dealing with the media, but also shows you who Trump is. Not scared to go to hostile areas to tell you what he believes in, for his future, for this country. I don't know what we can equate it to, but Harris would not sign up for, and before Harris, Biden, of course, would not sign up to go to a hostile venue and actually get tough questions. That's clear. So, I mean, she hasn't given a press conference. So there's a point to be had there that it's very impressive in many ways that Trump continues to take those type of assignments, for lack of a better word, when I can't think of another politician on either party that would step up in a scenario like that. But again, Harris, addressing, not at a press conference, wasn't asked at a press conference, but addressing the Sigma Gamma Rho sorority, that it's a reminder of what the next 4 years will look like under Trump. The divisiveness and the disrespect. And let me just say, the American people deserve better. I've got to say, the disrespect. Could you imagine a Democrat, Biden, Harris, you name it, getting a question anywhere akin to what that first question against Trump was? Or some other questions during that from the supposed mainstream media, through the media that's supposed to be fair and balanced in a way, ABC News. Would any Democrat receive a question that was that negative and that, to use Trump's term, nasty from the beginning? That's my question to you. We've got other comments coming in. We're going to talk quite a bit more about this. We do have a lot about the Harris campaign and the amazing momentum. Also, we'll talk a little bit about J.D. Vance. So all of that and much more. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. So many comments to get to. Let's dive right in. First comment from a viewer. I listened to Herman Cain, rest in peace, talk radio show, and later as a Fox contributor. And I recall him being asked what he preferred to be called, black man, African American, etc. And he simply said, how about a man? I'm not sure why it stuck with me, but I often think about that and to earlier discussions this morning. He was fun to listen to and very knowledgeable. And in my opinion, he was railroaded, on a few occasions. He absolutely was. Herman Cain You may not recall this, or you may. I don't know why I worded it that way. When he passed away, they mocked him because of, and when I say they, the media, the exact people we were talking about, because of the fact that he died of COVID. They ridiculed him because they wanted to be so adherent to the COVID rules and the whatever Dr. Fauci said, right? Which we're learning now about the lies and the secrecy of that. But they didn't turn on him. They were never for him. But they used to say despicable things about him when he was alive, and even in death, they said despicable things about him. And he was railroaded on numerous occasions. He was a great talk show host, a wonderful talk show host. And I had the pleasure of meeting him in all places of Ithaca. Real nice gentleman. Okay, next comment. What they did to Trump last night was absolutely ridiculous. And if you're going to talk about speech, I'm one of those deplorable Walmart shoppers and one of those stupid MAGA people. Trump doesn't care what nationality you are. He doesn't care what color you are. You're just people. Yes, you're Americans. He said that before. But yes, he was. If you watched it, you've got to remember it in context, because they're presenting it as if he went up there at a rally almost and made those comments. That wasn't the case. This was supposed to be a journalistic society. And just watch that first question, and we'll show you all you need to know about journalism today and what we will be and have been dealing with, but will be dealing with until the election. Another comment from a different viewer. And by the way, I like your labeling of yourself. Deplorable Walmart shopper. Another comment from a different viewer. I am extremely interested to know exactly what voting Democrats see in their party, but can't see what Trump has done for our country and the transparency he aspires to. Good point. Okay, Senate Republican Whip John Thune, because we're going to give you all sides, as we always do. He is a Republican, but he says the campaign is, and must be about the issues, and there's plenty to talk about. I just think that's where the focus needs to be. That's how we're going to win in November, and this is in reference to his comments about Harris. So trying to distance. Now, Senator Raphael Warnock, a black Democrat from Georgia. What a weird way that the Hill worded that. Okay. I'll tell you what. It's not surprising. This is who Donald Trump is. This is the politics of insult, of revenge and resentment and retribution. And I suspect we'll hear that all the way until November. Resentment, if you want to use that term, what would you say those questions were full of? Warnock said, I think at the end of the day, the people of America are going to reject that. They know what Kamala Harris represents. Here's a woman who is the daughter of a Jamaican man and an East Asian immigrant mother. She went to Howard University. She's married to a Jewish man. She embodies in her life story the American covenant, e pluribus unum. Out of many, one. Donald Trump doesn't understand that. Now, Senator Tom Cotton, of course, a Republican of Arkansas, was on CNN and addressed Trump's statements, saying it's refreshing to see a presidential candidate who's willing to go in front of the media, something that Donald Trump knew would be a tough interview. It turned out to be a hostile, adversarial interview, but he's been doing that for 9 years. Kamala Harris, meanwhile, has been hiding out for the last 10 days that she's been a presidential nominee. Before then, she used to do interviews every 5 days or so, but now she hasn't faced any media at all. I guess she thinks she can hide out for 100 days until the election. The issue isn't what race Kamala Harris identifies as. It's the fact that she identifies as a San Francisco liberal. So, of course, CNN doesn't drop it at that, because that's a very good answer from Cotton. So when they kept pushing, Cotton claimed, Donald Trump said that what matters is that she identifies as a dangerous San Francisco liberal, not what race she identifies as. They also pushed him, again, on that DEI hire. Do you denounce that? Boy, it was a hostile. You got to give anybody credit. I don't care who the person is, to go to that kind of hostile environment and be willing to speaks volumes to who Trump is. Because very few politicians, again, to Tom Cotton's point, Harris not giving an interview in her first 10 days as the nominee and we predicted it here, we said it, that she is going to run a campaign very similar to Biden, which is very scripted, very heavily scripted, short on substance. And if there is an interview, if there is a town hall, if there is some type of sit down, it is going to be with a friendly organization, which is most media, as you know. But she would never in a million years go to an event with even Fox News. But let's say it was as hostile as what we saw at that event yesterday. She would never put herself in that situation because, as Ken said, it's a chameleon politician changing in every course. But if she did go to an organization, they wouldn't push her in that way on the questions like that, a loaded question, no matter what the organization was. That kind of hatred is saved for Donald Trump. But she would never put herself in that situation. Donald Trump saying, I want to speak to the American people. And that's exactly what he did. J.D. Vance weighed in on the comments about Harris's racial identity, saying, the president doesn't do scripted, we'll say, baloney stuff. He actually goes into hostile audiences. He answers tough questions. He pushes back against them, but he actually answers them. And how nice it is to have an American leader who's not afraid to go into hostile places and actually answer some tough questions. He also said, so what he said, I thought it was hysterical. I think he pointed out the fundamental chameleon-like nature of Kamala Harris. And you guys saw yesterday, she was in Georgia, and she puts on a Southern accent for a Georgia audience. She grew up in Vancouver. What the heck is going on here? She is not who she pretends to be. When asked by a reporter explicitly if he questions whether Harris is black, Vance said, what I question is why she presents a different posture depending on which audience that she's in front of. Very Hillary Clinton-esque, if you recall. Hillary doing that with the accent. We've got to take a break. A little bit more on this. We are going to talk about the Harris campaign. Weigh in. We've been talking about Trump's comments. What your thoughts on those comments are. Also, what do you think of the Biden administration striking a plea deal with the 9/11 mastermind, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, and 2 other terrorists, so they are no longer facing the death penalty? Your thoughts on that as well. And if you want to talk about Israel, which we talked about in the 6 o'clock hour, we can talk about that as well. Whatever you'd like. You see the number on the bottom of your screen. Now stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Actually, it just hit me. It's 7:20. We're going to talk to our friends from Into the Woods when we come back. So make sure you stay right there. Grab your calendar so you can write down all the days and times and find out about the Keuka Lake Players presenting Into the Woods, which opens today. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting from the Hesselson studio, and this is the Steuben Senior Services Fund section of our program. And today we're talking Into the Woods. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Hi, thanks for having us.
I almost hesitated on the name. Into the Woods, the Keuka Lake Players Incorporated production of Into the Woods. Now, you had a junior version and a senior version. Other than age, what's the difference?
So the junior version only does about half the show. It does Act 1, and then everything kind of ends at the end when everything's happily ever after.
Oh, okay.
So it's only about a little over an hour long, and the senior production is clocking in at about a little over 2.5 hours without intermission.
Oh, that's quite a difference.
Significantly more content. We also added more trees, so I like to call it Into the Woods now with more woods.
Wow,
Into more woods.
That's hilarious. But when it says senior, that doesn't mean it's not for all age groups, right?
No. So the cast still does have an age range. So we do have an 11-year-old who plays Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk, all the way up to people in their later years as well. But the junior production had an age limit of being up to 18. So the junior production, you're not legally allowed to have anybody above the age of 18 in the cast, whereas the senior production, you can cast anybody of any age. But we were really looking to showcase some of our youth this year without necessarily having to do Annie or Oliver, which are really the only opportunities to have as many kids in it as you want. So we decided, let's work smarter, not harder, and have one set but 2 casts. And so that's how we ended up with 2 shows.
And were you in? Did you direct? And were you both in the? Oh, you couldn't be. You couldn't be in that. Yeah. That's what am I asking? You just answered my question. I'm sorry. I was so worried about putting your names up on the screen that I didn't want to miss it. So how did it go, though, overall?
It went really well. We had 32 kids in the cast
Wow.
from over 5 different school districts in the area, plus a couple of homeschooled children as well, ages 6 all the way up to 18. And it was really well received, a great production. And then some of those kids are going to be working on crew for this show. We have a couple of kids who are cameo roles in the adult show.
Oh, okay.
The person running the light board was our baker's wife in the junior show, and the person running Spotlight was in it as well. So they still hung on for the other trip into the woods as well.
Yeah, well, we've already practiced, right?
Yeah, they know the show pretty well until it gets to Act 2 and then they're confused.
Right, makes a complete different ending. So tonight is opening night. That's exciting. Mm-hmm. How long did it take to prepare to get to opening night? When did you start with rehearsals and getting involved?
So we held auditions back in May.
Oh, okay.
But as a director, my process, and Cheyenne's, because she's on the board and was the assistant director for the junior production, our process started way back in January, figuring out the concept and how we were going to manage both shows at once. But the cast was cast back in May, and they've been working really hard all the way up until tonight.
Now, Cheyenne, how do you get prepared to be Little Red Riding Hood?
Oh gosh, you have to read all the stories first.
Yeah.
Everyone knows the story, but still you go through all of the different iterations of it, and you get you get a little bit of help from the actual stage productions of Into the Woods as well.
Oh, sure.
But then you want to take your own spin on it.
Yeah.
And I think I really tried to make my own character out of it. So I think a lot of it came from right up in here.
Well, that's good. Have you acted in a lot of plays?
I haven't been in a play in about 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So this is my first one back on stage.
What brought you back out of retirement? What was it?
I don't even know. I think it was just the allurement of the woods.
Sure. There you go. And now, David, you've been in numerous plays, probably too many to count, right? How did you prepare to be the baker?
I just kind of looked at it from the perspective of he's the doting husband. He's very kind of almost simple-minded, but as the show progresses, he kind of learns to take charge and kind of, understand where his place is in the story. Or the story of stories, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and that's what makes this so interesting. And I'm going to ask you, Sarah, if you've always been wanted to be in the background as compared to but before that, it is amazing how many different stories are in this. How many fairy tales are involved?
The major ones are Cinderella, the Baker and the Baker's Wife, Rapunzel and the Witch, and Little Red Riding Hood.
And Jack and the Beanstalk.
But there's Jack and the Beanstalk as well. There's little nods to other ones woven in.
Little Easter eggs.
That was 5-ish.
Okay.
Of them, and it's funny to watch them all interweave instead of being their own separate stories, which was fun.
Now, have you always wanted to be behind the scenes, or are you normally acting?
I do a little bit of everything.
Okay.
Back in high school, I did a lot of costuming. I was the best student costume designer in the state of New Hampshire.
Oh, wow.
And then I did a lot of stage management at Alfred University, where I got my theater degree. And since then, I've been on the stage. I've been off the stage. I like directing because it gives me a chance to have a little bit of a hand in everything.
Sure.
And when I'm in a show with David, I do usually try to toss myself on stage for at least a minute. So I do cameo right at the finale, which is fun.
Oh, that's very nice. How's the planning on this? You said you've been working on it since January. How has it been going as you look at tonight, opening night?
I mean, it's kind of surreal because we've been planning for this for so long.
Yeah.
That, it feels like almost like a wedding where you plan for it for, a year and a half, and then suddenly it's here, and then it's just over in a second.
Yeah.
So definitely dreading striking and taking everything apart. That's always the hardest bit on Saturday after our matinee. But no, it's been a wonderful experience, both the junior show and the senior show together, creating that mentorship opportunity. And I'm going to miss the woods, but I'm going to enjoy having my evenings back.
Yeah, I'm sure. What's a typical rehearsal like? How long does something like that take?
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so when we were starting, we shared a time slot with the junior production.
Okay.
So they would have the first hour or two from about 6 to 8, and then we would take on the 8 to 10 time slot on the same stage. And then after the junior production finished, our production rehearsals went into the entire 4-hour time slot from 6 to 10. So the last 2 weeks have been a lot of grinding, a lot of getting into that and using up that time to really make sure everything looks beautiful and well rehearsed.
From beginning to end, how many times do you think you've went through Into the Woods and rehearsed?
Oh gosh.
I think at this point,
80?
like,
Yeah.
How many?
I'd say 80, probably.
Yeah.
okay.
Do you ever get sick of it? I mean, I know it's a great play, but I'm saying 80 of anything.
So I keep waiting to.
Yeah.
Usually I do. This production, I think I find something new in it every time, and somebody does something new or different, or the lighting change hits just right this time. So I haven't been bored with it yet.
Yeah. If you like a song, you will listen over and over. Sure. And this is a collection of songs.
That's
so.
true. That's true. That's a really good point.
I found every once in a while I will get hooked to a different song. Like the other day I was like, you know what I really need to listen to, even though I'm not practicing it? David's song, the Baker song in Act 2. And I was like, I need to listen to this again and again and again and again. And it's just, it happens every couple hours, couple days.
Yeah. Now, you had mentioned you haven't done a play in quite some time, and now that this is nearly over, will you be doing more?
I hope so, yeah. I really enjoy working with the Cuca Lake Players. They're a very friendly and welcoming organization to be a part of. While I'm on the board, that also kind of shoehorns me into more shows.
That's why they got you on the board, right?
Yeah, right.
We wear a lot of hats.
I'm
We
sure.
all do. We're not just in the show, but we're on the board and we're moving some things around and just doing poster designs and things like that. So it's.
How long has the Cuca Lake Players been around?
Since 1986.
Really?
So we're excited to be heading towards our 40th year. We're hoping to do some celebrating in 2026 to celebrate that.
Of course, we're talking Into the Woods, and that is at Haverling High School Auditorium in Bath. Tonight is opening night at 7 o'clock, and then Friday at 7 o'clock, Saturday at 2 p.m. What should people know? Where can they find out more just before we head out the door?
They can find out more on our Facebook page, or if you Google Cuca Lake Players, you'll find our website as well.
Well, great. I don't know ever how to end these interviews because I know you're not supposed to say certain things to somebody on opening night. So,
Break a leg is always good.
Break a leg. There you go. Okay, break a leg. And thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. And we are back. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Here's all the information you need to know. Thank you to our guests from the Cuca Lake Players. There are the exact times and days to check out Into the Woods at the Haverling High School Auditorium. Opening tonight. Also, I asked a question yesterday, and we're going to get to some comments here in just a moment. If you go to the Chemung County Fair, did you go yesterday? Are you going tonight to see the Oak Ridge Boys? I want to hear from you what you thought. I've heard nothing but great things, but I want to hear from you, the viewers, about the Chemung County Fair, which opened yesterday and continues today. Today is senior day. Those 55 and older getting in free. But I would recommend, I'd highlight the fact that if you're thinking of going, but you're not one of the people in the theme night, like yesterday was veteran, you're not a veteran. Today's senior, you're not a senior. Admission is still just $2. So I wouldn't let that stop you. All right, comment from a viewer. The best way I can describe young Democrats is those that don't know what they don't know. We need to educate the best we can. And I would say this doesn't fit perfectly, but Trump speaking to that society, the National Association of Black Journalists, yesterday, in what was, at least from the moderator's point of view, a hostile environment, speaks to that. And many of you may remember the late Andrew Breitbart. Andrew Breitbart was so influential and important to the Tea Party movement at the time. He passed away very young. But if you ever read his book, Righteous Indignation, and if you haven't, I highly recommend it. I say about every year, 2-3 years, I pick it up again just to look back at it. And he said at the time that you can't go to just friendly environments as a Republican. He used to do real time with Bill Maher a lot. And people would ask him, why do you go there? They hate you, they boo you, they pick on you. But his idea was you can't just always preach to the choir, because there could be one person in that audience, a couple people watching at home that say, oh, interesting. I'll have to do more research. And the reason he felt this way is because he was a staunch liberal. And he got a job where he was in his car for long periods of time and started listening to talk radio and specifically Rush Limbaugh. And he went in with a hatred towards Rush, not because he'd ever listened to him, but because what people had told him about Rush Limbaugh, which is very often the case when it comes to talk shows. So hated him and listened more and listened more and listened more until he switched and became a forever influential member of the conservative Republicans. So I just wanted to mention that Trump is going to places, to piggyback off that comment, to places where maybe he is getting his message across to those who may not typically hear it. One last thing on Trump's statements. J.D. Vance also said yesterday that the former president walked right into the NABJ conference and showed he had the courage to take tough questions, while Kamala Harris continues to hide from any scrutiny or unfriendly media like the coward that she is. She has not held a press conference since becoming the presumptive nominee. Oh, awesome. This is from a viewer. I'm going to the fair today, maybe later, when the Oak Ridge Boys play. I will say, having seen the Oak Ridge Boys in concert, they put on an amazing show. So if you're on the fence and my recommendation means anything, I would highly recommend it because you're gonna forget how many songs that they had that you loved. It's really one of those kind of concerts. Also, I'd love to hear on tomorrow's show, if you are so inclined and kind enough to do so, I'd love to hear what you thought and what your favorite part of the fair was. How's that? Okay, let's get back into the political talk, because we have to take a break here pretty soon. Boy, it's getting bad for Vance in media coverage. Vance isn't scared of it. Trump isn't scared of it, as we've seen. J.D. Vance's net negative favorability rating gets even worse. He is the first guy after immediately following a convention, a VP pick, who actually had a net negative favorability rating that is underwater. I mean, it's the worst vice presidential pick of my lifetime, said Enton, Harry Enton from CNN. Good, fair coverage. If we look at the net favorability rating, we did this segment last week, which basically said that he was the first one that had a net negative favorability rating coming out of the party's convention. It has only gotten worse, from -6 points to now -15 points. Mark my words, this is the worst vice presidential pick probably since 1972, when George McGovern chose Thomas Eagleton as his VP pick. He got replaced. I don't think Vance is going to get replaced, but that's what we're talking about. In no planet did I ever think we'd be talking about VP this late into the cycle after he was picked like 10 days ago. That's when another CNN spokesperson, Bakari Sellers, responded by saying, I think that J.D. Vance is kind of the Sarah Palin of Dan Quayle's. There you go. The unbiased, fair-minded journalists at CNN. Now, Carrie Lake, Republican Senate candidate, talked about this, the false narratives. Fresh off of her primary win, she says it's going to be dicey because the mainstream media is in a full-on panic. The false narratives. We get a great guy like J.D. Vance, who served this country honorably. He built himself up from nothing. He came from very difficult circumstances, and immediately these guys back here on the riser try to tear him down, meaning the media. Some are suggesting, and I don't buy into this, but I bring you all the coverage that we can possibly fit within 2 hours. Sources are saying that it is Kellyanne Conway that is bad-mouthing J.D. Vance behind the scenes. Can Kellyanne Conway catch a break? The way her, I think, ex-husband now, George Conway, treated her, talking bad about her boss, Trump, and continuing to do so, it was really heartbreaking to watch how pathetic that guy could be to disrespect and embarrass his then wife. But according to these anonymous sources, 20 Trump campaign staffers, allies, confidants, and advisors were quick to shoot down any notion that Trump was turning his back on Vance or was displeased. Conway denied the allegation that she's behind some of this chatter, calling the dozen anonymous accusers, because there's a dozen accusing her of this, gossip girls and ankle biters. Now CNN is saying, again, Harry Enton, who we had just mentioned, said that the election turnout is now going to be historic. That all of a sudden so many people are energized because of Kamala Harris. Not the energy, or energized, I guess, when she originally ran for president herself and having to drop out before Iowa. Not the energy to keep Biden in because no one wanted Harris to be the pick. But now I guess it's going to be the most historic turnout in election history. Joe Rogan, we're going through a lot of things. As I say, we give you all sides here. Joe Rogan, the controversial podcaster, suggests that Harris is going to win. She's going to win. His guest, Michael Malice, said, no, she's not. When Malice presented the question again, Rogan refined his answer, saying that she could win. I'm not saying because I think she's going to. I'm not saying because I want her to. I'm just being honest. Rogan says his hunch is based not necessarily on Harris's likability, but rather on Trump's lack thereof. And that's what a lot of this talk is, which is people aren't voting for Harris. People weren't voting for Biden. They're voting against Trump. They don't like Trump. So as you've heard so many people say, they wouldn't care if it was Donald Duck. They wouldn't care if it's a ham sandwich. They're not going to vote for Trump. They're going to vote for the ham sandwich. So that's what his mindset is on that. They just want no Trump, no matter what. What I think is going to be interesting. Oh, and he also mentioned that and I think this is a good point by Rogan, that the attempted assassination of former President Trump has since been memory hold. Yeah, they don't talk about it. The media doesn't talk about it. It's almost as if it never happened. You would have thought Trump getting shot would have had 4 years of corporate journalists talking about hate speech causing violence. Then to be like, let's take a step back, and then went for what, a week? Harris is the least popular vice president of all time. And then in a moment in time, all of a sudden she's our solution. She's our hero. Try Googling a negative story on her. You won't find one. If you Google Donald Trump and Google gives you 7 negative stories, it's going to move the needle a little bit towards Harris. Talking about tipping the scales with the tech companies, which we all know is crystal clear. They did it before. Social media as well. Going back to the Hunter laptop story. So, yes, it's as if the assassination attempt never happened. And the Harris, who was a horrible vice president, no one wanted her, now the best thing that could ever happen to this country. It's amazing what a turnaround. And the talks of the momentum changing and how much momentum she has is remarkable as well. Now there is, where is it? Here we go. Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank. If you ever watch Shark Tank, well, if you do, you're going to hear what he has to say here in just a moment because I am almost out of time. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. And we are back with Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. A couple of comments from viewers before we get to Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank. Ken says, I did feel bad for Harris Faulkner during the Trump interview at the NABJ. She is a staunch advocate for Trump, and you could clearly see she was uncomfortable being between the other journalists and Trump. I would agree. You did feel bad for her. I felt that as well. Another comment from a different viewer. I joined that viewer in the basket of deplorables, but I think it was irredeemable basket of deplorables. Thank you very much. We'll get to O'Leary and we'll get to other comments as we wrap things up. If you don't want to get your last minute comments in, do so now because we only have a few minutes left. Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank said, and this was on Jesse Waters' show, in the next 2 weeks, the happy talk is going to have to stop because someone's going to sit her down and say, let's talk inflation. Let's talk border. Let's talk policy on energy. Let's talk policy on foreign affairs. If she wants to win, she's got to go to the center. But she's got to have some ideas on how to run the country. You might hate Trump, but he still has his track record on policy. You might hate him. I get it. But you've got to do something. Again, I'm not sure how scripted her... Listen, she only has to be completely scripted for 4 months. She only has to avoid scrutiny and questions on her record or what she would do for 4 months. Because the way the media is covering her now, she could sail into this by just being so wonderful and spectacular. And many people on the ground saying, how? Could you tell us what? Doesn't matter. And people go in to vote for her just because she's not Trump and because she's getting all this sweetheart attention. But he also argued that the problems are coming to light, such as the report, and we talked about this in the past, 92% of her staff in the vice presidential office, 92% staff turnover rate. That's an extraordinary number, he said. You're wiping out your entire staff. Obviously a problem there. But this narrative going on with Kamala Harris now is very interesting. The narrative is that she's the best, she's the solution, she's the hero. But 92% of her staff turnover rate. What does that say behind the scenes? And she does, the more you see her speak, the scripted reminds you a lot of Hillary Clinton with the changing of the accent and things like that. Jesse Waters even saying, how could she lead millions of Americans if she can't even lead 50? Now, unfortunately, her staff is probably bigger than 50 people. But O'Leary said it would be important to leave aside the politics and ask, what has Kamala Harris actually done, actually achieved? Because if I was hiring her, and I'm not trying to be partisan, I would ask her, what was the goal? What did you achieve? Because any governor or senator that would put into presidential viability would have a history, a track record of doing stuff. Let's take our last break. Get those comments in as we wrap up this edition of Frankly Speaking. Boy, the time flies. All right, we'll be right back. We are back, wrapping up the August 1st edition of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. This has been a lot of fun this morning. Thank you for all the comments. Kamala Harris's foreign policy chops are being questioned. What has she done? Where has she been? Biden-Harris administration supercharged migration from Latin America, according to a new report. According to, where was this from? The Daily Mail, a video published by James O'Keefe. Remember that name? The video undercuts the DNC's narrative of party unity after Harris received the party's coronation without receiving one primary vote. The DNC manager said in the video, I like Kamala Harris, but I don't think she'd win this year. The vice president is so easy to attack, right? She doesn't have any accomplishments to speak of because she's vice president. She doesn't make laws. Also saying that she is, where is it? Weirdly unpopular. I was seeing if I could find the exact quote. But that's from the DNC manager. Here's another comment from a viewer. I always thought we should vote policy and not personality. But if I was voting for personality, it certainly wouldn't be for Harris. That's going to be something that's going to be interesting to see if that finally takes its toll. Because we've seen one of the reasons why she has been unpopular as vice president even before, and why she didn't receive a single vote back in 2020. Because she was, and it was documented even by the media, not very, kind of likable. Her staff, obviously, we mentioned quitting. So it'll be interesting if the media can keep up this pace of just propping her up, or if she will get tough questions, if she will do anything unscripted. Now, Alina Habba, a legal spokesperson for Donald Trump, has accused Harris of breaking the law by co-conspiring to hide Biden's cognitive decline. Habba was speaking to a crowd of Trump supporters at a rally in Harrisburg, if you saw that yesterday. President Trump has been and is innocent of any crime other than loving his country, she said. Let me tell you, Kamala, you are committing a crime because the only co-conspirator I know of, the Biden-Harris administration, is you. And you have lied to us about President Biden for the last 3.5 years. The truth always comes out. So let me tell you, America, her policies are the same ones we've been living in for 3.5 years. So don't get it twisted. They don't work. And that's another way the media does you a disservice, does the American people a disservice. The fact that this is not a major scandal, not just on Harris's back, but on the White House in general, that they kept Biden's cognitive decline a secret from the American people. And keep in mind, I know I keep saying this, but he is still president of the United States. With everything that's going on right now with Israel and Iran and Ukraine and China, you've got to keep in mind that he is still president of the United States for nearly 6 months. And who covered this up? How do they cover this? These are questions that need answers, and I don't think we'll ever find out because the media has no interest. The media's only interest right now is attacking Trump and Vance and propping up Harris, and it will be that way until November. There's an interesting piece by Miranda Devine, and she says, with the assertion of Saint Kamala, we are now watching the mean girl rebranding of the Democrat Party. and it has to be the biggest miscalculation in political history. You can find that for yourself. We are out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you for all the comments. What a fun show we had this morning. Thank you to our guests from Into the Woods. There you go, the Keuka Lake Players. Thanks for being on the show this morning. Join us tomorrow for the Friday morning edition of Frankly Speaking, where we always have a lot of fun like we do every day. So join us every weekday morning starting at 6 a.m. right here on WYDC TV Big Fox. We will see you tomorrow morning bright and early. I look forward to it already.